New York never slept, and neither did Nathan Carter. In his world, every second held a monetary value. As the city lights flickered against the glass skyline, he sat in his high-rise office at Carter Capital, eyes locked onto his monitor, where numbers danced in a never-ending rhythm of financial power plays. His phone vibrated lightly on the desk. A message. He glanced at the screen. Ileana. I made dinner. If you make it home in time, we can eat together. Nathan exhaled sharply, barely acknowledging the message before setting the phone aside. He had no time for distractions. His upcoming meeting with European investors would determine the success of a multi-million-dollar deal. Dinner could wait. Across the city, in their penthouse, a place they once called home, Ileana Carter sat at the dining table. The elegant setting, candles casting a warm glow, beautifully arranged dishes, but only one seat was occupied. She stared at her phone, waiting for a response. On my way. Be there soon. Anything. Nothing came. Minutes passed. The food grew cold. Eventually, she sighed, standing up to clear the table, a ritual she had grown used to. Their marriage had started as a dream. Nathan, the brilliant, ambitious man she had admired from afar, gracing the covers of financial magazines. When they first fell in love, he could spend hours talking about his dreams, about how he would build something revolutionary. Ileana had fallen in love with that fire in him, but now she wasn't sure anymore. Nathan was no longer the man who once shared his wild ideas with her late into the night. Now, their conversations revolved around quarterly reports and investment strategies. She felt like just another element in his meticulously planned life, one he often forgot. Standing by the floor-to-ceiling windows, Ileana gazed out at the pulsing city below. She loved New York, loved the energy of it all, but she hated feeling lonely in a place that was supposed to be her home. Somewhere across town, Nathan leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples. The meeting had ended, leaving him drained. He unlocked his phone, rereading Ileana's message. For a split second, hesitation flickered in his chest. Then he placed the phone down, unread messages stacking atop one another. Beyond the towering windows of his office, New York glowed with endless possibilities. But inside him, an unfamiliar emptiness crept in. Subtle at first, then heavier, like a weight he couldn't name. He didn't realize it yet, but he was already losing something far more valuable than any deal. Ileana Carter was used to being admired. In the boardroom, she commanded attention effortlessly. Her sharp mind, creative instincts, and undeniable presence made her one of the most sought-after creative directors in New York. Clients trusted her vision, colleagues respected her leadership, but admiration at work meant little when she returned home to an empty apartment. At Thompson & Hayes Media, her days were filled with presentations, brainstorming sessions, and industry meetings. She thrived on the energy of it all, pouring herself into every campaign. But as soon as she stepped out of the office, an uncomfortable silence followed her home. She used to wait up for Nathan. In the first year of their marriage, she would sit by the living room window, reading a book, listening for the sound of the elevator doors opening. But slowly, she stopped waiting. She stopped asking what time he would be home. She stopped expecting. One evening, after a particularly exhausting day at work, she walked into their penthouse, heels clicking softly against the marble floor. The space was pristine, luxurious, but it felt cold, lifeless. She made herself a glass of wine, allowing herself a moment of quiet. Then her phone buzzed. Oliver Hayes? Ileana, fantastic job today. You really brought that campaign to life. Let's celebrate sometime. Drinks on me. Ileana hesitated before typing back. Thank you, Oliver. Appreciated. Short, polite, distant. But as she stared at the screen, she felt something stir. A reminder of what it felt like to be noticed, to be seen. Something she hadn't felt in a long time. Oliver was the kind of man who noticed things, the kind who remembered details. He wasn't just a successful media mogul. He was charming, intuitive. In meetings, he always asked how her day was going. He listened. He made her feel seen in a way Nathan never did anymore. It wasn't dangerous, not yet. But it was something. As she sipped her wine, she thought about the version of herself she had lost, the the woman who used to laugh easily, who used to believe in love stories, the woman who once thought marriage meant forever. Elena sighed, setting down her glass. Across town, Nathan was probably still in his office working late, completely unaware that something fragile in their marriage was beginning to crack. The Plaza Hotel was bathed in golden lights, its grand ballroom adorned with cascading roses and shimmering chandeliers. The annual Valentine's Charity Gala was one of the most prestigious events in New York, where the city's elite gathered in their finest attire, sipping champagne and making million-dollar donations with effortless grace. Elena had spent weeks organizing this event, ensuring every detail was flawless. It wasn't just another corporate gala. It was a masterpiece. The theme she had chosen, Hearts Unveiled, carried a meaning that only she truly understood. As she stood in front of the mirror in her private dressing suite, she took a deep breath. The deep sapphire bowl gown hugged her figure elegantly, its silk fabric flowing like the tide. Endless, mysterious, untouchable. Blue. The color of the ocean, the color of longing. Her hair, usually styled in sleek waves for corporate meetings, cascaded softly around her shoulders, framing her face with a delicate vulnerability. She barely recognized herself. There was no trace of the woman who used to sit alone at candlelit dinners, waiting for a husband who never came home on time. Tonight, she wasn't just Elena Carter, the business executive, the patient wife. Tonight, she was Elena. Outside the ballroom, luxury cars arrived one after another, spilling out CEOs, politicians, and celebrities into the grand entrance. Among them, Nathan Carter stepped out of his black car, dressed in an impeccable tuxedo. But for the first time, he wasn't the one commanding attention. As he entered the ballroom, conversation slowed. Eyes shifted toward the grand staircase. And then he saw her. Elena stood at the top of the marble staircase, a vision of quiet strength and grace. The crystal chandeliers cast a soft glow against the fabric of her dress, making her seem almost ethereal, like a wave frozen in time. She wasn't waiting for him. She wasn't looking for him. She was shining, and it had nothing to do with him. Nathan felt his throat tighten. How long had it been since he had truly seen her? Not as his wife, not as the woman who waited for him, but as someone untouchable, independent, radiant in her own right. And worst of all, he realized, she no longer needed him to see her, since he had seen her not just as the woman who supported him, but as someone independent, extraordinary. Then, before he could move, Oliver Hayes appeared. With effortless charm, Oliver reached for Elena's hand, his timing too perfect to be coincidental. The way he looked at her, the way he admired her, sent a sharp pang of something foreign through Nathan's chest. Jealousy. As Elena placed her hand in Oliver's, Nathan felt an unfamiliar sensation clawing at his gut. He had spent years believing that their marriage was stable simply because it existed, but for the first time he realized he might be losing her. The string quartet played a slow, haunting melody, filling the grand ballroom with an air of quiet intimacy. The dance floor gleamed under the golden chandeliers as couples moved in elegant rhythm, their bodies swaying in perfect harmony. Nathan Carter stood frozen at the edge of the room, his jaw clenched as he watched Oliver Hayes lead Elena toward the dance floor. His Elena. She moved with effortless grace, her sapphire gown flowing like ocean waves, mesmerizing and untouchable. As Oliver placed his hand on her waist, guiding her into the first steps of the dance, something inside Nathan snapped. Without thinking, without hesitation, he strode forward. As Oliver prepared to spin Elena, Nathan cut in, his grip firm yet controlled as he took her hand. "I believe this dance belongs to me." His voice was steady, but his eyes burned with something unspoken. Elena stiffened in surprise, her breath catching as Nathan pulled her close. For the first time in years, she felt his presence, not just as her husband, not as the powerful businessman he always was, but as a man who finally realized what he stood to lose. Oliver hesitated for only a second before nodding, stepping back with a knowing smile. And just like that, Nathan and Elena were alone on the dance floor. The music continued, slow and delicate. Nathan's hand rested on the small of Elena's back, his touch unfamiliar yet strangely intimate. "You're full of surprises tonight," Elena murmured, her voice unreadable. Nathan's fingers tightened slightly around hers. "Maybe I finally realized I don't want to keep making the same mistakes." Their movements were flawless, as if their bodies remembered a rhythm their hearts had long forgotten. Yet, beneath the elegance, there was tension, an entire conversation happening between them without words. Nathan's heartbeat pounded in his ears. He had never been the jealous type. He had never thought he'd have to fight for something he assumed was his. But standing here, with Elena in his arms, he realized maybe she never had been. Maybe he had only borrowed her love, and now he had to earn it back. But looking into Elena's deep, stormy eyes, he saw a wall he had built with his own neglect, and he was terrified it was too late to tear it down. As the final notes of the melody drifted into silence, Nathan and Elena stood still in the center of the ballroom. Their hands remained intertwined, but the dance had ended. For the first time in years, he didn't want to let her go. Elena, however, was the first to pull away. She took a small step back, placing distance between them. Not much, but enough. Enough for Nathan to feel the unspoken words hovering in the space between them. "Nathan, why now?" Her voice was barely above a whisper. He swallowed hard. There was no scripted answer for this. No business strategy, no calculated move. This was real, raw, terrifying. "Because I finally opened my eyes," he admitted, voice rough. Elena studied him, searching his face for something, maybe regret, maybe sincerity, maybe the love that once burned between them. "I spent so much time chasing success, thinking I was building something for us," Nathan continued. "But all I did was leave you behind, and tonight, seeing the way you shine, I realize I might have already lost you." A flicker of emotion crossed Elena's face. Pain, longing, disbelief. "You didn't lose me tonight, Nathan," she exhaled softly. "You lost me a long time ago." The weight of her words hit him harder than any failed deal, harder than any market crash. He had taken her presence for granted, thinking she would always be there, always waiting. "Tell me it's not too late." His voice was quieter now, edged with something unfamiliar. Fear. Elena hesitated. A part of her wanted to believe him, to believe that this moment meant something. But words were easy. She needed actions. "If you want to fight for me, Nathan, you'll have to prove it." She didn't wait for a response. With one last glance, she turned and walked away, leaving Nathan standing alone in the middle of the ballroom, surrounded by people, but feeling more alone than ever. Nathan Carter had always believed that success came from grand gestures. Multi-million-dollar deals, high-stakes negotiations, strategic takeovers. But winning back his wife? It wasn't going to happen with one sweeping declaration of love. It would happen in the quiet moments. The first morning after the gala, Nathan woke up early for the first time in years. Instead of rushing to his office, he walked into the kitchen, where Elena was pouring her morning coffee. She looked at him, surprised. "You're up early?" Nathan hesitated, then reached for a cup. "Thought I'd have coffee with you." It was small, insignificant to anyone else, but to Elena, it was the first real sign of change. Days turned into weeks, and Nathan continued to show up, not just physically, but emotionally. He remembered how she liked her coffee, one sugar, no cream. He left hand-written notes on the counter before leaving for work. "Good luck with your presentation today." He started coming home on time, putting his phone away during dinner. He paid attention. One evening, Elena came home to find their penthouse softly lit, a familiar melody playing in the background. Nathan stood by the dining table where 2 plates were set, her favorite wine poured. "I know it's not much," he admitted, "but I'd like to have dinner with my wife tonight." Elena looked at him, truly looked at him. For the first time in a long time, she saw effort. She saw a man who was finally learning that love wasn't about grand gestures. It was about showing up every single day. Time didn't heal wounds on its own, effort did. And Nathan Carter was putting in the effort. Weeks turned into months, and little by little, he rebuilt what he had unknowingly broken. He didn't just say he'd change, he proved it. Nathan showed up for Elena in ways he never had before. He took her to dinner without checking his phone once. He remembered anniversaries not because his assistant reminded him, but because he wanted to celebrate them. He listened when she spoke, not just to respond, but to understand. And something shifted between them. One morning, as Nathan poured Elena her coffee, 1 sugar, no cream, he glanced up to see her watching him. A soft smile played on her lips. "What?" he asked. Elena shook her head, amusement dancing in her eyes. "I just never thought I'd see the day Nathan Carter made coffee for someone else." Nathan smirked. "I guess I'm full of surprises." She took the cup from his hand, their fingers brushing, a touch that felt different now. It wasn't hesitation anymore. It wasn't doubt. It was something new. Something they had almost lost, but somehow found again. Nathan didn't just win Elena back. They found each other again. Nathan Carter once measured success in numbers. Stock prices, profit margins, the size of his empire. But now he measured it in moments. In the way Elena's laughter filled their penthouse again. In the quiet mornings they shared over coffee, where work could wait, she came first. In the stolen glances across a dinner table, where his phone remained untouched. Their love was no longer a business deal, an arrangement held together by routine. It was something deeper now. One evening, as they walked through Central Park, Nathan reached for her hand. Without thinking, without hesitation, Elena glanced at him, surprised, but didn't pull away. Instead, she tightened her grip. "I don't think I ever asked you," Nathan murmured. "That night at the gala, when I cut in, would you have rather danced with him?" Elena stopped walking. The city lights reflected in her sapphire girl eyes, the same color as the gown she had worn that night, the night he almost lost her. She smiled, tilting her head. "Would it matter?" Nathan exhaled, then shook his head. "No." He met her gaze. "Because I'd still fight for you. Every single time." A slow smile spread across Elena's lips. "Good," she whispered. Because that was love's true measure. Not in words, but in actions. Not in promises, but in presence. Nathan had once built an empire, believing it would make him whole. But now, as he walked hand in hand with Elena, he understood he wasn't building for himself anymore. He was building for them. Nathan had once built an empire, believing it would make him whole. But he had been wrong. Elena was the only thing he had ever truly needed. And this time, he wasn't going to forget that.